What if the Golden Age's glittering close-ups hid a pharmacy of secrets? Beneath the tuxedos and tiaras, Hollywood's icons ran on Benzedrine breakfasts, bourbon lunches, morphine midnights, and dice that rattled till sunrise. Studios sold perfection. Backlot fixers mopped up pills and empty bottles before gossip columnists arrived. Tonight, we slip inside those sound stages to uncover 17 stars whose greatest performances were masking their own addictions. True tales that might change how you watch every classic film.
Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor entered stardom at 12, spine already curved from scoliosis. Over decades of horseback falls, weight-fluctuating crash diets, and childbirth complications, pain became a constant companion. In the mid-1950s, doctors prescribed codeine. By Cleopatra's Italian marathon, she added Demerol and muscle relaxants to daily routine, washing them down with Dom Perignon. Studio medics, eager to keep their million-dollar Cleopatra upright, delivered injections on set. Taylor quipped, "I'm the most expensive pincushion in Rome." Offset, paparazzi caught her and Richard Burton clinking Moet at noon. The public saw romance, missing Payne's driver. After Burton divorce, loneliness deepened reliance. Friends noted pill bottles labeled E.T.'s buddies. Weight gain from steroids spurred crash diets of lettuce and champagne, fueling dizzy spells. In 1983, Taylor collapsed in West Hollywood after mixing painkillers and wine. She checked into Betty Ford Center, one of the first megastars to enter public rehab, smashing stigma. Post-recovery, she campaigned for AIDS research, channeling addictive intensity into philanthropy. Yet relapses flickered. A 1988 hospital visit found opiates in her system again. Final years on mobility scooter hinted at damage done. When Taylor died 2011, obits hailed her as scream goddess and humanitarian.
Rita Hayworth. Margarita Cancino became Rita Hayworth after Columbia Pictures' electrolysis scraped away her natural hairline and dyed her locks fiery auburn. With Gilda's single hair flip, she birthed the ultimate femme fatale, yet off-camera shyness throttled her. The gap between image and self bred insecurity. She drowned in bourbon highballs. During 1946 press junkets, Hayworth traveled with a silver flask engraved, "To Gilda, love Rita," refilling it thrice daily. Marrying Playboy Prince Ali Khan in 1949 thrust her into paparazzi storms. European tabloids chronicled yacht parties where champagne flowed like seawater. But royalty life bored her, and soon those parties became lonely binges while Ali raced horses. Returning to Hollywood, Rita's tolerance was legendary. Crew members on Pal Joey set wagers on how many martinis she'd down at lunch and still pirouette through a take. Alcohol eroded punctuality and memory. On separate tables, producers assigned an assistant to cue her lines via hidden earpiece after she blanked mid-scene. Hayworth's anguish surfaced in interviews. "Men go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me." Nightcaps escalated into breakfast drinks. Physicians diagnosed alcoholic dementia by the late 60s, though medical records eventually revealed early Alzheimer's. She retired to a New York apartment, often forgetting she'd been an icon at all, clutching water she thought was wine. Rita died in 1987, and headlines mourned a legend lost to disease. But friends knew the first thief was whiskey, poured to extinguish a sex symbol's blistering spotlight long before memory slipped away. Ava Gardner, North Carolina country girl Ava Gardner, stormed into MGM with a face so beautiful it made you nervous, as Bogart mused. But insecurity stalked her husky drawl, and she found confidence in bourbon and camel straights. While shooting The Killers in 1946, Gardner nursed a silver flask between takes to steady trembling hands. The crew mistook nerves for femme fatale poise, marrying bandleader Artie Shaw and later crooner Frank Sinatra at a jet-set pressure. Sinatra's tempestuous jealousy triggered screaming matches. Ava calmed post-fight adrenaline with double bourbons, lighting cigarettes and chains until ashtrays overflowed. Filming Magambo in Kenya, she greeted dawn with whiskey coffee, the savannah's heat amplifying buzz into vertigo. Yet director John Ford praised her wildcat realism, unaware it was partly whiskey-ignited ferocity. By the 60s, roles waned and socials focused on her bar tabs at Madrid's Ritz Hotel.
Friends worried when she coughed blood. Doctors diagnosed emphysema, but she kept puffing. "They're my only friends who don't ask questions," she joked. A stroke in 1986 paralyzed half her face, ending on-camera life. She spent final years in London pulling an oxygen tank behind her, yet sneaking sips of Cutty Sark. When she died at 67, Sinatra reportedly sobbed she was the one. Bourbon bottles in her flat stood emptied but undiscarded, a shrine to nights when Ava felt an unstoppable movie star glow reflecting off amber glass.
Judy Garland. Louis B. Mayer called Judy Garland his little hunchback before MGM's costume magicians transformed her into America's sweetheart. But his so-called affection came at a pharmaceutical price. In 1935, 16-year-old Judy was averaging 4 films a year, plus live radio, soundstage rehearsals, grueling vocal lessons, and publicity junkets. To keep her thin and tireless, the studio physician supplied Benzedrine capsules nicknamed dolls. A neon green pep pill with breakfast jolted her awake for morning dance numbers. A second dose floated her through afternoon retakes of Over the Rainbow. At night, when her pulse was still hammered, she received secobarbital reds to bulldoze her into sleep. By the time Meet Me in St. Louis wrapped, her tolerance was so high that any lull felt like freefall. Marriage to bandleader David Rose offered no respite. He found her pacing hallways at 3 a.m., cigarette trembling, voice rehearsing tomorrow's lines on autopilot. When she delivered daughter Liza in 1946, withdrawal convulsions struck so fiercely the doctors slipped her narcotics in the maternity ward. Judy's public smile never betrayed the cycle, but hear it in the raw hesitation of later recordings, a quiver on the phrase, "Have yourself a merry little Christmas," as if she's begging herself first. In 1950, she slashed her jugular with a broken shaving mirror after MGM fired her, the ultimate studio rejection. She survived, toured in triumphant comebacks, yet the chemical dependence outlived contracts, marriages, even the triumph of A Star is Born. When Judy finally collapsed in a London bathroom in 1969, the coroner found enough barbiturate in her bloodstream to anesthetize a force, proof that the pills designed to keep her dancing had scripted her final bow. John Barrymore. Nicknamed the Great Profile, John Barrymore's stage Hamlet was legendary, but offstage, he courted a different spirit, gin. His father's touring trunks hid flasks. By 13, John was mimicking Dad's dramatic bows and bourbon breath. Broadway success financed caviar breakfasts and bathtub martinis. A silent-era heartthrob, Barrymore hit Hollywood during Prohibition, yet speakeasies welcomed him like royalty. Filming Grand Hotel, he stored gin bottles in prop urns. Co-stars recalled him strolling between takes, quoting Shakespeare at passing electricians, then forgetting lines once cameras rolled. Director George Cukor posted assistants to lure him from bar stools, but tolerance morphed into saturation. Barrymore's kidneys ballooned. He collapsed on Romeo and Juliet's set, drenched in flop sweat. 1934 brought a humiliating arrest for drunkenly relieving himself in La Cienega Boulevard traffic. Gossips was dubbed him has-been with a bladder full of talent. Monetary stakes soared, divorces, alimony, medical bills, so he slurred through radio spots parodying himself, gin glass in hand. At one broadcast, he passed out mid-monologue. Technicians revived him with black coffee, but couldn't revive his reputation. By 1942, delirium tremens hallucinations plagued nights, spiders crawling, stage spotlights burning. He died that May of cirrhosis at 60. Friends Errol Flynn and Raoul Walsh famously borrowed the body for a macabre joke, propping him at Flynn's dining table, a final party for a man whose life had been one endless toast. Legend? Absolutely. Cautionary tale? Etched in every empty bottle backstage on Broadway to this day.
Bela Lugosi. Hungarian émigré Bela Lugosi hypnotized 1931 audiences with "I Never Drink Wine," but stage combat injuries during Dracula's Broadway run left him racked by sciatica. Doctors in New York's Hell's Kitchen administered morphine for relief. Lugosi's accent made morphine sound exotic, but the dependency was common as cobwebs. Universal typed him as a monster. Roles dwindled. Pain remained. By mid-30s, he required daily self-injections. Between takes on Son of Frankenstein, he'd retreat to the dressing room, emerging serene with a puncture hidden under a cape. When morphine supplies dried during World War II, he switched to Demerol, black market, selling autographs outside studio gates to fund vials. In 1955, age 72, Lugosi voluntarily entered Los Angeles County Hospital for detox, the first celebrity to publicly declare narcotic addiction. Press photographed him pale yet defiant, spotlighting an epidemic Hollywood preferred to hush. Post-rehab, he filmed Plan 9 from outer space scenes, gratis for Ed Wood, grateful for any work. Though sober, finances bleak. He died 1956 of heart attack, leaving widow Lillian a mere $1,900. Lugosi's candor paved the path for later stars' rehab without career burial, but he didn't live to benefit. The count still rises each Halloween, yet few viewers realize those haunted eyes once stared down a far more persistent vampire, morphine.
Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn's grin promised danger, and the danger was real. Off camera, the Tasmanian rogue guzzled rum straight from ship's decanters, echoing his on-screen swashbucklers. But stunt injuries from daredevil sword fights seeded deeper addiction. Lionel Barrymore's private physician first injected Flynn with morphine after a fractured ankle on Captain Blood. Flynn adored the warmth flooding his veins, like a tropical tide, he wrote in memoirs. Soon, morphine joined his daily regimen, chased by champagne breakfast and Cuban cigars. Warner Brothers silenced rumors with press junkets of the star rescuing dogs and championing Spanish Civil War refugees, but insiders saw the spiral. At Hollywood parties, Flynn drained a fifth before charming debutantes into midnight skinny dips at Mulholland Estates. By dawn, he'd need a fix to quell tremors, then roll onto set for the adventures of Robin Hood's gravity-defying leaps. Courtroom scandals amplified dependence. 1943's statutory rape trial triggered stress that only more opiates could mute. Flynn's charisma masked decay, until it didn't. On Against All Flags, crew noted scabbed injection tracks under his gaunt forearms. His once athletic torso ballooned, then hollowed. In 1959, aged 50, he keeled over in a Vancouver apartment after a 96-hour bender, autopsy citing myocardial infarction, alcohol, and Demerol. The headline read, "Robin Hood, dead at 50." But Hollywood's inner circle knew the real villain was a cocktail of jungle rum and hospital-grade narcotics that no heroic sword could parry. Mickey Rooney was America's pint-sized dynamo, top box office draw 3 consecutive years with Andy Hardy's wholesome grin. But between matinee idol smiles, he itched for action. While filming at Culver City, Rooney's car often veered to Santa Anita Racetrack. By 21, he was betting 5-figure sums, tipping stable boys 50s like pennies. Studio chiefs tolerated losses until loan sharks called MGM's accounting office. Producer Louis B. Mayer advanced Rooney's salary draws against future projects, essentially paying him to keep cameras rolling. At Beverly Hills Polo Lounge, Mickey charmed waiters into midnight poker, inflating IOUs bigger than his 5'2" frame. He married starlet Ava Gardner in 1942, promising reform. Instead, honeymoon mornings found him sneaking to hotel casinos. Ava left with breakfast gossip. Post-war career dips worsened the spiral. Television royalties disappeared across felt tables in Las Vegas's Flamingo. By 1954, Rooney owed the IRS $700,000. He accepted roles in schlocky drive-in fare just for cash flow, simultaneously filing bankruptcy. Friends staged a Gamblers Anonymous intervention. Rooney left early to hit Hollywood Park's night program. Even late-life comeback triumphs, the Black Stallions' Oscar nod, and Broadway's Sugar Babies couldn't offset compulsion. Castmates recall him slipping into Atlantic City between Saturday shows, returning flushed, win or lose. When Rooney died at 93 in 2014, his estate totaled a modest $18,000. Most earnings long vanished across roulette wheels. Hollywood remembers the mighty entertainer. Vegas remembers the high roller whose luck rarely matched his talent.
Buster Keaton. The great stone face made crowds roar, but laughter couldn't dampen melancholy when talkies sidelined Buster Keaton's inventive genius. MGM's strict scripts left no room for his daredevil improvisations. He numbed frustration in prohibition speakeasies, graduating to home-delivered tubs of raw gin. During What No Beer in 1933, he showed up so drunk he tried to dive through a fake window prop, thinking it was breakaway glass. Studio execs strapped him into a contract clause mandating daily breath checks. He smuggled gin in hollowed camera batteries. Estranged from first wife, the custody battle drove deeper binges. Paparazzi captured him weaving across Sunset Boulevard in pajamas. 1935 saw him committed to a sanatorium, strapped to bed for delirium tremens. Upon release, he joined a traveling circus as a gag man. Audience unaware, Clown was living in flop houses between one-night stands. Rehab via new wife Eleanor Keaton provided a foothold. She locked liquor cabinets, monitored finances. By the 1950s, Keaton was largely sober, rewarded with television revivals and Chaplin's cameo offer in Limelight. Yet his hands still shook at bar counters, stroking seltzer, not gin. Keaton died of lung cancer in 1966. Doctors found liver surprisingly healthy given history, proof that sometimes the comeback sticks. But the lost decade remains, genius muted in a bathtub of poison, while Hollywood learned belated the cost of stifling creativity.
Humphrey Bogart. Bogart's trademark rasp wasn't all acting. Raised amid Manhattan privilege but yearning for grit, he shaped himself with Lucky Strikes and Cutty Sark. On the Maltese Falcon lot, Bogey started days with a triple shot poured into coffee. Crew called it breakfast bourbon. Between takes, he'd pace, trench coat swirling, lighting cigarette after cigarette, stacking ashtrays like granite cairns. Warner executives worried when doctors diagnosed esophageal pre-cancer in 1943, but Bogart vetoed surgery. A tough guy doesn't whine, he quipped, so they shielded him with shorter call sheets. Offset, nights belonged to the Rat Pack prototype at Romanoff's, bottles flowing until pianist Hoagie Carmichael closed the piano. Bacall arrived like a rescue, yet even Baby couldn't pry scotch from his hand. The couple simply switched to home bar marathons, scribbling love notes on matchbooks between highballs. During the African Queen's Congo shoot, malaria pills and heat left Bogey vomiting, but he claimed gin sterilized the water. The Academy believed him long enough to award an Oscar, but 1956 scans revealed esophageal cancer. Doctors removed his entire esophagus. Recovery demanded broth sipped through a straw. Still, Bogart begged friends to smuggle 2 fingers of scotch into Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. In January 1957, weighing 80 pounds, he whispered to Bacall, "I never should have switched from scotch to martinis." Hollywood's quintessential cynic died as he lived, smoldering between sarcasm and smoke, proof that celluloid bravado can't outshoot biology.
William Holden. William Holden's screen image, steady, capable, wry. hid a river of vodka coursing beneath. After winning the Oscar for Stalag 17 in 1953, Holden bought a safari reserve in Kenya, toasting big game sunsets with full tumblers. Alcohol greased his social ease, yet quietly expanded innings. On the bridge, on the River Kwai chute, he negotiated extra salary, per-day fees, knowing director David Lean's perfectionism would drag months. The income financed case after case of Smirnoff shipped upriver. By the 1960s, the apartment, Holden arrived functional but puffy-eyed. Makeup teams invented new matte to hide broken capillaries. Friends noted he kept vodka in his trailer freezer, sipping from coffee mugs to avoid gossip. Despite charitable work, helping create wildlife foundations, he'd fly to LA fundraisers and disappear into Beverly Hills bars until dawn. Studio insurance classified him high risk, yet box office clout kept hires coming. The tide turned in 1981. Alone in his Santa Monica apartment, Holden reportedly slipped while drunk, slammed his head on a nightstand, and, disoriented, never called for help. He bled to death, discovered days later. Coroner pegged blood alcohol at .22. Hollywood lost an everyman hero, proof that functioning can mask fatal. In posthumous tributes, co-stars recalled his laughter around campfires, rare moments when the glass stayed down and the man shone sober beneath starlight.
Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead boomed into rooms like a jazz trumpet, voice lower than most leading men and vocabulary saltier than a sailor's stew. By 19, she'd conquered London theater, toasting critics with gin before each curtain. Cocaine soon spiced her cocktails. She called it "My Little Snowflakes." Back in Hollywood by the early 30s, Bankhead swaggered through Paramount corridors, draped in silk pajamas, openly flirting with both genders. Production heads adored her magnetism, but loathed the unpredictability. On Faithless, she demanded morphine shots for female troubles midway through scenes, blowing kisses to flustered crew. When censors slashed her risque dialogue, she retaliated by throwing a live parakeet over the set wall, shouting, "Fly, darling! Escape dullness!" Gossip columnists printed every antic, but the studio buried hospital stints for drug-induced pneumonia. Tallulah's addictions weren't limited to chemicals. She famously bragged of bedding 5,000 lovers, from statesmen to chorus girls, chasing adrenaline hits between cocaine bumps. In the early 1940s, severe bronchitis nearly collapsed her lungs. Doctors prescribed codeine cough syrup, which she swigged neat like port wine. Her crowning screen moment as the cynical socialite in Hitchcock's Lifeboat in 1944 should have birthed a film dynasty, yet she sabotaged follow-ups by arriving late, coked up, or missing entirely. By 1950, she was blacklisted, not for politics, but for unreliability. She retreated to stage triumphs and raucous radio cameos, voice now a gravel road. When she died in 1968, pneumonia was listed as the cause, but insiders whispered it was simply the bill finally coming, due for decades of snowflakes, codeine toddies, and sleepless incandescent nights.
Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy's granite screen presence belied title guilt over alcohol. Raised Catholic, he viewed every drink as sin, yet couldn't resist. Early Broadway struggle fostered habit. Post-Oscar fame gave full purse. MGM staff created code, Spence is visiting the boys, meaning he'd slip to Chasen's bar. Tracy could film hungover better than most acted sober, but mess-ups mounted. On Edison, the Man, he vanished for a weekend, found sleeping off Bender in a downtown Mission. Studio assigned a handler who literally sat outside the bedroom door. Off-set, Tracy haunted back booths with pit-stop confessionals, downing Old Forester, then reciting contrition to priest Father Kelly at dawn mass. His affair with Katharine Hepburn provided emotional anchor. She rationed bottles to keep him functional, sometimes pouring liquor down sinks. Yet he escaped via hotel side doors to local package stores. Diabetes diagnosis in 1950 exaggerated consequences. Binge, sugar spike, hospital. He'd swear off drink in ICU, resume weeks later. Preparing for guests, Who's Coming to Dinner in 1967, Tracy was frail, liver scarred. Shooting scheduled around his morning tremors and afternoon prayers. He completed the final scene, thanked the cast, and retired home. 17 days later, Hepburn found him collapsed near the kitchen sink, glass of bourbon beside. Spencer Tracy's duel with whiskey was lifelong. His greatest performance? The illusion of control audiences still applaud.
Montgomery Clift. Sensitive Montgomery Clift redefined masculinity with wounded eyes in A Place in the Sun, yet those eyes hid agony. Years of theatrical method left him neurotic, but the real rupture came May 12, 1956. Driving home from Elizabeth Taylor's dinner party, Clift's car smashed into a telephone pole. His jaw shattered, nose split, 2 front teeth lodged in his throat. Taylor's quick fingers saved him from choking, but surgeons rebuilt his face with metal plates. Painkillers, Demerol, then later Procadan, were necessary, but Clift's addictive personality clung. He washed pills down with gin, stifling both physical torment and rumored self-loathing over his closeted bisexuality. Directors noted the shift. Once disciplined, he became erratic, nodding off mid-take. On Raintree County, dailies revealed an unedited before and after. Pre-crash scenes, magazine cover handsome. Post-crash sequences, puffed, eyes roomy from opioids. Friends staged interventions, but Clift called them emotional muggings. He'd lock himself in the Beverly Hills Hotel, curtains drawn, replaying Brahms at skull-splitting volume, blood-flecked tissues littering carpet. Insurance underwriters nearly refused the misfits until producer Frank Taylor posted a personal bond. Clark Gable quipped that Clift's tremors made his horse spook. By 1966, Clift's liver rivaled a prize fighter's cauliflower ear, and memory gaps widened. On July 23rd, a house guest heard him reciting Katharine Hepburn's line, "Gee, but I'd like to kiss you." Hours later, Clift was dead of coronary occlusion, age 45. Taylor wept on learning. She'd once saved his life, but couldn't rescue him from the silent morphine he carried like an understudy in every role thereafter.
Clark Gable, dubbed the King, Clark Gable cultivated rugged vigor, but nicotine and pep pills propelled that facade. Young Gable drove oil trucks by day, theater by night, fueling shifts with cigarettes rolled so tight they looked like twists of rope. Stardom magnified consumption. On Gone with the Wind, he smoked 100 a day, ash falling onto Scarlett's petticoats between takes. Under relentless schedules, promos, reshoots, war bond tours, Gable's energy tanked. Agent Minna Wallace introduced benzodrine sulfate. Gable popped tablets before 6 a.m. calls, capturing Rhett Butler's insouciant lean without eyelids drooping. The combo of cigs and stimulants eroded blood pressure. After World War II bomber service, he returned, aged, gray, but still marketed as virile. He upped nicotine to 4 packs, peppered with coffee, spiked by dexedrine. Heart twinges arrived during 1955's Soldier of Fortune. Doctors warned. Gable vowed to cut down, substituting filtered cigarettes, but doubling bourbon nightcaps. Filming The Misfits in Nevada's desert heat strained him. Co-star Marilyn Monroe recalled him inhaling 2 cigarettes between camera slates. He rapped Friday, suffered a massive heart attack Sunday, died 11 days later at 59. Many blamed the stressful shoot, yet his autopsy showed arteries tar-painted by decades of nicotine and stimulant roller coaster. Rhett Butler got the last laugh. Gable didn't.
Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre's bulging eyes and sing-song menace haunted classics from M to Casablanca. But even as he whispered lines, another voice called, the velvet hush of morphine. Diagnosed with gallbladder inflammation in 1935, Lorre received injections for pain relief during Fritz Lang's European shoots. When he arrived in Hollywood, the prescription tags followed. On Warner lots, Lorre started each morning at the nurse's station, joking he needed courage serum for Bogart's jokes. Soon he bypassed nurses and self-injected. Morphine smoothed accent nerves, but its silk threads tightened. Producers noticed drowsy line deliveries. Fellow character actor Sidney Greenstreet teased Peter's acting through cotton wool. After The Mask of Demetrius, Lorre checked into a sanitarium claiming exhaustion, code for detox in an era of studio spin. Abstinence was brief.
By 1947, morphine merged with methadone in a medical juggling act that left him sweating through trenchcoat collars. He pawned personal scripts to finance black market vials when doctors cut him off. The 1950s television boom might have resurrected his career, but morphine dulled timing. Cue cards blurred, pupils pinned. In 1964, Lorre attended Bogart's widow Lauren Bacall's dinner party, trembling so hard he spilled wine across his lap. Weeks later, he died of a stroke brought on by decades of narcotics and obesity. He was 59. A Hollywood Reporter's obit praised his eerie calm, unaware that calm was chemically purchased. Like many Golden Age supporting geniuses, Peter Lorre left audiences deliciously chilled, never revealing the icy needle that iced his own nerves first.
Vivien Leigh. Vivien Leigh's incandescent Scarlett O'Hara masked cyclones within. Even before Gone with the Wind wrapped, her mood swings swung faster than Atlanta weather. Diagnosed today, she'd be labeled bipolar. In 1940s Britain, doctors simply prescribed barbiturates and brandy nightcaps. Touring with husband Laurence Olivier, Leigh hid amphetamine tablets in makeup kits to blitz depression before curtain. She called them little day savers. Tuberculosis further weakened her. Coughing fits spattered lipstick-stained tissues. Between bouts, she devoured scripts, but manic phases pushed her to rehearsing till dawn, washing exhaustion with cognac. During a Streetcar Named Desire shoot, she slept 2 hours, chain-smoked, and erupted in sobs over prop placement. Cast thought she was method-acting Blanche Dubois. Truth was, Blanche mirrored Vivien's fragile psyche. Olivier sought electroconvulsive therapy. Sessions left her confused, reliant on benzodiazepines. Alcohol smoothed ragged edges but deepened depressions. Mid-1950s affairs and public arguments filled tabloids, fueling brandy binges. By 1967, TB re-emerged. Weakened, she stayed in bed reading fan letters, a brandy balloon glass on bedside. She died that July, aged 53. Leigh's addictions were entwined with illness, making blame impossible. Yet note the cost: 8 miscarriages, possibly linked to meds, the dissolution of theater's golden couple, and creative vistas she might have conquered had treatments been kinder. Vivien remains luminous on film, proof art can glow even when lamp filament frays.